sharing with you how to approach your automation project for IBMI, where the greatest benefits are, and the steps you can take to be successful. My name is Chuck Losinski. I'm the Director of Technical Solutions for the Robot IBMI product line here at Fortra, and I'm joined today by Mr. Tom Huntington. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Chuck, great to be with you guys again, and you, Chuck, of course. And I'm our EVP of Technical Solutions at the now Fortra company, longtime member of the Help Systems Fortra empire, I'll call it that today, and been here for over 35 years. I'm also an IBM Power Champion, so I spend a lot of time in a lot of industry related topics around the IBM platform, and again, conducted the IBMI Marketplace Survey this year for the 10th year.
That's right. Excellent information. And that's actually a great segue into why we're doing this webinar. Tom, can you talk to us a little bit about what we saw in our latest webinar or our latest marketplace update?
Yeah, so like I said, it's the 10th year that we've done the survey, and this year we had somewhere around 400 individuals fill out the survey. And like last year, we saw an uptick in the IT business automation category, and this year it's up to 44%. It was like mid 30s last year. So it just tells me there's a heightened or renewed interest in automation, and we'll talk about some of those reasons. So again, if you want a copy of the survey, you can just go out to our website. It's ungated and download it. And we also did a webinar on this topic. So thanks,
Yeah,
Chuck.
yeah, and Tom, I would also add that it could be that there's additional interest in the IT and business automation due to the 65% of our respondents that were concerned with IBMI skills.
That it definitely has a direct correlation when you think about it. So we'll talk in a little bit about why we see this trend going on. So this is our agenda today, Chuck. We're going to talk about why automation is trending, some automation best practices, control costs while boosting your productivity, dependency processing, how we can eliminate interactive steps, what to do with those Unix, Linux, Windows dependencies, and then of course, good old processing history and audit trails and why that's important. Okay, so why is automation trending? Well, I think it has to do just what you alluded to is it's about that IBM skills, or the other thing that's happening in relationship to that is people are retiring. And it's not always just IT people that impact the running of your business, because there's a lot of longtime employees that just do the same thing day in and day out, and they don't tell anybody. And then all of a sudden, they either leave the company or say, I'm going to retire in 6 months. And oh, by the way, I've been running all these things every night, because people finally ask, well, what do you do? Right? So that is not just an IT related retiring, but it could be a longtime employee in other areas. And then the other thing we see is these older homegrown tools that are outdated. People have written their own utilities on IBMI for automation and monitoring over the years, and those things have gotten a little long in the tooth. They might not support the operating system, or worse yet, the person who wrote that technology for you has retired and nobody knows how to touch it. The companies are also looking to automate business processes in general. I think as we went through COVID, a lot of organizations really struggled because they had manual business process again, even business processes that end users were submitting. The other thing that we saw during the last 5 years or so is this big emphasis on robotic process automation, or RPA, which was kind of coined again by the Gartner Group and creating another category, of course. But reality is it's really automation again at the really base of it, or the core of it. It's all about automating business processes, and robotic processes automation is just kind of the thought of creating scripts that are like automated bots to go out and do the same thing over and over again. Not really a whole lot new compared to what we've been doing on IBMI with CLs and stuff like that. And then the other thing that we see is there's this trend, or this march to cloud. and to be managed by MSPs. But what MSPs are not telling customers, or customers aren't realizing in the process, is that the MSP is not automating your systems along with monitoring. They're going to monitor your systems, but they're not going to be responsible for the automation. So in the same survey, we also asked people, are they running their systems unattended after normal working hours? Now, there's a little bit of interpretation there of what is normal working hours. We get it. IBMI is very core. A lot of businesses are running it 24/7, and they're depending on that data to be accessible 24/7. That doesn't necessarily follow the same suit for what I'm talking about here. I'm saying, you know what, a normal working day is, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever you want to define it as. And when you go home at night, does the computer run itself? That's kind of the gist behind this. And right now, almost 70% said that the computer runs himself if they answered the question the way I thought it would, which is good. And yet there's still, 30% that are not running their systems unattended. And Chuck, on the next slide, we talk about why maybe they haven't done that. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, like you said, there's been renewed interest in automation, but yet we run into those folks who kind of argue against or push back on automation. So we ask, why haven't you automated? And oftentimes we get responses like this: we're too big and complex. We have the staff. Why do we need to automate? We have roadblocks like, we created this homegrown interface years ago, and everybody knows how to use it, and the people are here. So, we just don't need to look at it. Or maybe they haven't actually been allocated any budget for the automation project, because that is exactly what it is. It is a project, and it does need a budget. Likewise, and this is my job, and this is Tom's job, and that is to elevate the comfort level with the automation process. And quite frankly, that's why we're doing this webinar today. Tools for automation are important. You don't want to be rolling your own or writing your own automation tools, commercial tools like our robot product line, robot schedule, some of which we're going to talk about today, will give you the toolkit in your tool belt to accomplish the automation goal. Oftentimes we find out that, automation is just not a priority right now. There's other business aspects that need attention. It's not a priority. But eventually, like Tom said, somebody's going to retire, somebody's going to walk away, and lo and behold, there's going to be a lot of manual steps that are still taking place. And what about those non-IBMI processes running out in the Linux world or Windows world that also affect your IBMI business processes? What do you do with those? Okay, we're going to talk about that today. Tom loves this one: fear of missing something.
Yeah.
And Tom, you've talked about this many times, putting in place some kind of check because 20 years ago somebody missed a step. All right, and now you have to go in and record the fact that something ran or didn't.
And whoever looks at those checklists, Chuck, I mean, nobody ever reviews that stuff.
Right. Oh, and by the way, we were getting off IBMI.
We've heard a lot of that.
Yeah, and that might have been 10 years ago, or maybe it's just not happening. So, Tom, let's answer the question: controlling costs while boosting productivity. How do we go about that? All right, so think about it from 30,000 feet. What are the benefits of automation? There's a value to the business. It's not just about IT. It's about business value. It's about adding agility to your ability to get the work done, better service to the end users or your customers in general, accommodating new technology without having a big impact on your job streams, of course, lowering downtime and lowering costs. And how do you go about that? By doing more with less, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why I think it's important for people to, as they look at automation, and even before they started, is to be thinking about strategies on cost justifying automation, because it is a project. You have to put rules in place, and it's going to cost you some money along the way. So one of the things to do is keep a list of past outages that maybe have cost the company money by loss of productivity, unhappy customers who have to wait on something. Whatever the outage is, there's generally a business value assigned to that outage, yet many of us don't track those things. Build a list of items that cause delays overnight in night processing. Some business applications are unfortunately buggy or defect ridden, and yet we fight them every single day of our night processing, and yet nobody seems to want to fix them. Those things, the poor quality impacts your night processing. And then we have to look at labor cost. People who are unautomated or running a manual process day after day generally are going to have more staff turnover. People are going to get burnt out on that. They're going to get tired of it. It's probably going to be just kind of a short gap career and they're going to move on. The other aspect of this is, what is the cost of firefighting? I mean, I know organizations that get together every Monday for an hour-long meeting to go through all the problems over the weekend and things that broke and ran out of order and all the other problems that occurred due to the fact that they don't have things as automated as possible. What does that cost the organization? The cost of staffing 24 hours a day. Could you reduce staff and go without anybody in the office after hours during the week, and maybe Saturdays and Sundays, just people on call versus having physical people there? The other thing is cost of doing audits. We know many industries that today's world, they're doing a different audit every month almost. And so if you're doing a manual night processing, how do you report that IT related item to the auditor and show them how you're tracking critical processes, monitoring critical processes if you're doing it all manual? It's very, very time consuming.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're talking about is increasing productivity. The same amount of staff being able to accomplish more. And face it, we don't have any IT staffs here or any IT departments that are overstaffed. So really doing more with less is the name of the game. Likewise, as business increases, you're able to scale quicker and take care of the needs of the business because you are automated. Likewise, 24/7 coverage. And then you can take that staff that is doing those manual processes, and there's other things that they can be doing to improve service to the business.
Now, automation, we know just over the years will eliminate and reduce errors in night processing and or just even daily processing, because the computer's not going to run things out of order. It's not going to forget to run something. It's not going to accidentally lose the report, enter the wrong value, got too busy, skipped the process, forgot a process to check it off on the list. And the old, oh, was I supposed to do that? I didn't know that. Having rules in place and making things event driven are really going to reduce errors.
Yep, your automation tool is not going to call in sick, take a vacation, or have a bad day, I like to say. Okay, as far as passing audits, expect your automation to be able to collect the appropriate data that your auditors may need, possibly for Sarbanes-Oxley and so forth. And you should be able to take that data and print it out automatically or somehow export it automatically to a CSV or something into a format that your auditors can then digest either manually or they may have an automated tool to digest the audit data. So be able to export the audit information automatically will certainly make your audits a lot more digestible to the business.
And if you have an automated set of processes, it's going to be easier for you to report on service level agreements. Might not be easier to meet them if you got a defective application and there's a lot of problems with it, but it should be in general easier to meet them. But it gives you the ability to measure performance, look at things more granularly, completing backups, completing critical jobs. The jobs things is always something I've told people is there's probably, 10 jobs out of 1,000 each night that are probably the game changers. And if those don't run successfully, you have all kinds of problems. So putting rules around 10 processes that you report on and give you that information you need to stay on top of your SLAs is important. So gathering that information in a database driven rule-based solution is going to be much easier, and it's also going to give you the ability to distribute reports and documents to the rest of management or to your end users about the night processing.
Yeah, right on. All right, let's talk about automation best practices, Tom.
For sure. With best practices, one of the things that we say all the time is that you really should be only using one scheduler. And that becomes important because if you want to do any kind of forecasting or know what's going to run when, having one scheduler, one place to look is the way to go. I don't know how they do it across an environment where they got hundreds of Windows servers and individual Windows task schedulers for something. It's mind-boggling to me what they do for planning maintenance. Event driven, make things event driven. It's always better if things are, in the case of the robot land, we call them reactive jobs, but dependency driven type events. Don't overcomplicate things. We find people will overthink things, make things too complicated. To me, I've always said if it sounds complicated and it's hard to talk about, then it is complicated. Let's step back from it and think about doing it a different way. Be granular. Don't just have one big CL that you run every single night with everything in it. It doesn't allow you to report on the performance of each individual critical step in that process. It doesn't allow you to be more flexible when it comes to rerunning things. So that's a problem for people. Use dynamic parameters. Stop having your programmers write routines always for trying to automate parameters. Most of your enterprise scheduling solutions have dynamic parameters in them. Work with other team members, like in about audit automation or automating the audit and compliance reports. So look out into the rest of the business and say, are there things that the IT group could be doing for you to make you more productive daily? Can we run that report for you, give it to you, have it converted to a spreadsheet in your hands when first thing when you come in every morning? There's no reason that we can't be more of a help to the rest of the organization. Chuck,
Yeah.
back over to you.
Yeah, yeah. So we often talk about some of the barriers to automation are these timer jobs. You've got a job that runs, let's say, in the Windows world, and you've got IBM processes that are dependent on the Windows process completing on time. Those can be very difficult to deal with, especially if one of those steps is delayed. So by having one scheduler and by making your job stream event driven, you eliminate those timer jobs, and therefore your dependencies really are dependable. Use automation to monitor the success of your automation. So monitoring needs to be built in to the toolkit. We're going to show you today how easy that is with the robot scheduling solution. Management by exception, we talk about that all the time. You don't want to be notified and be keeping track of things that happen normally. You want to know about the exceptions. Certainly you want the audit trail to report on, for instance, the success of jobs executing on time, but that shouldn't be data that you're manually collecting. Tom already mentioned this, keep a list of tasks that you do want to automate in the future. Automation is a journey, we say. You're maybe never there. Tom, I think you coined that phrase, and it's absolutely true. And then I like to point out that you need to teach your programmers and your operations staff on automation. And anytime a new process needs to be added to your job stream, think about automation. How is it going to be automated? Does it require a variable or something like that for a date range? Okay, so now we're going to talk through the best practices for automating, and we're going to start with dependencies. All right, and specifically, we're going to talk about how to do this in Robot Schedule. This is our batch scheduling tool. It actually consists of multiple modules, but we're going to talk about the base product called Robot Schedule. And Robot Schedule is there to help you automate your batch processes. We've also built some additional interfaces over the years for the Oracle JDE Enterprise One and SAP. Tom's going to talk about automating interactive processes with Robot Replay, and then we're going to talk about multi-platform automation with Robot Schedule Enterprise. Okay, so basic scheduling in any scheduling tool, whether it's the Windows Task Scheduler or cron or whatever, has discrete scheduling built in for day of the week, time of the day, day of the month, etc. Some schedulers don't do so well, for instance, with interval type scheduling. Think about the built-in native IBM scheduler, all right, scheduling a job to run every hour or something like that. That's not something easily done in some of the native schedulers that are out there. And then likewise, putting in exceptions. Maybe you only want to run that iterative process between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. So in other words, you could have exceptions to the normal discrete scheduling. So for instance, here on this particular job, we're going to run this job on the last day of the fiscal period, and we're going to run that at 1,800 hours. You can see you've got up to 8 run times. Even something as simple as that can be difficult. So you've got all these discrete scheduling options, and you can use, for instance, different calendar options to go with that discrete scheduling. Now, why would you add dependencies into this? Well, that's the theory of event-driven scheduling, where you can save time in that your prerequisites might not fit your discrete schedule. Maybe all the prerequisites aren't satisfied by 6 o'clock at night. All right, you want to make sure all those prerequisites are satisfied, and then go ahead and trigger your downstream processes. All right, and that eliminates that manual monitoring. Are my files in place and so forth, so I can run my nightly process. You get dependable dependencies, as I mentioned earlier. All right, so you've got a good solid link between your prerequisite and your downstream processes. You're not dependent on that discrete schedule. But you might have the need sometimes to implement both, where you might sometimes want to react downstream immediately when your prerequisites have occurred, or you might want to say, okay, my prerequisites maybe were in place by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but I don't want to run my nightly process till 8 o'clock. Certainly, you should have the flexibility to do that. So we've got a number of ways where we can execute or create what we call a reactive process. In robot schedule, we can react to batch jobs, we can react to jobs in other partitions, user-submitted jobs, Windows files, native files, or some combination thereof. All right, so let's take a look at this in our live robot schedule. All right, so you're looking at a robot schedule running on a single partition. We've got a number of options here. We're not going to go into all the various options. I am going to show you what we call the job blueprint. All right, the job blueprint is a job flow diagram, and the links here show some kind of dependency. All right, in robot schedule we have a individual job, and that's what you see here in green. In fact, let me bring up the legend. All right, our job types are color coded. And then there's some other symbology that you might see inside of the job box itself. All right, so you can see this little gear indicates that this is a command type job. So there is CL type commands inside, defined on the inside of the job. I will point out too that this particular job is a little bit different type of job. We call it a group job, all right, a group control job. So it's a job that exists in robot schedule to control other individual jobs. So rather than scheduling each individual job and setting up dependencies between each individual job, you can put them into a group and manipulate them that way. All right. So for instance, I'm going to go into this group job and I'm going to add some additional members into the group. All right. So I'm just going to go to my group membership. You can see I've got, this is a multi-step MRP process, and I'm going to add some additional MRP jobs into the group. All right, so I'm going to add job 40 and 50 into this group. All right, if let's say that job MRP 30 should be actually executed second, I can move those up and down, and I can get the sequence correct. So this particular group job is going to be executed in sequence. If any one of these jobs fails, the job stream is going to stop right there. All right, now you can see we've got all all 4 of those jobs are all tied to this group job.
Very
Now
cool.
now I'm also going to set up this job to be a downstream dependent job on this MRP1 job, and that's called reactivity. All right, so MRP1, that job needs to run, and that's going to then kick off my MRP group. All right, so I'll go MRP, find my MRP1 job. All right, so that's now my prerequisite to my MRP group. Simple as that. All right, and finally, I'm also going to add a event prerequisite for you folks that already have Robot Schedule. You might not even know about this if you don't use the GUI interface. I can set up a prerequisite that is a file dependency. It's a native file dependency. In this case, it's in the integrated file system. So if a file is dropped into my web orders directory between the hours of 8 and 11 p.m., that is also a prerequisite. All right. So I'm going to add that as a prerequisite here. And I'm going to put Tom, I'm going to use an OR condition between my job and my event, just because, right?
Just for a little variety. Okay.
Yeah. All right. And let's edit that and put in an OR condition. So you can use your logic operands to decide, can either one of these jobs kick off your downstream job, or maybe both need to be executed prior to the dependent job. And I actually picked the wrong job, Tom. I'm going to remove that. All right, could happen to anybody. Here's WebGen. I'm going to make that an OR condition. I'm going to say OK.
Got it.
And I'm going to add that. So now both those are prerequisites. All right. And let's do this. All right, there's my web orders directory. And I'm just going to copy one of these files. And I'm going to copy it into web orders, orders. Let's just throw in a date there. This date won't make a whole lot of sense. I'll just say May 16th, 2024, a.log. Okay, so any file that gets put into that directory is going to be able to trigger my job stream. All right, so we're going to detect that that file was added, and that's going to then trigger my MRP group, and there it is. It's already running the individual jobs that are in the MRP group. It's up to MRP 40. As they complete, we're displaying the status here in what's called our schedule activity monitor. All right, and the MRP group has completed successfully. How was that, Tom?
That is very cool. So we got all those jobs, 20, 30, 40, 50, and the right order. Nice.
Yeah. All right. So let's add some more complexity to this. Let's talk about adding interactive steps to your job stream.
Yeah, we talked about roadblocks earlier, and over the years, interactive processes are one of those roadblocks, right? IBMI is obviously, to a lot of people, AS400 and green screen, and people are doing things interactively on it. And there are commercial packages out there that require some interactive activity at night before you run the night processing or close out the business. There's also homegrown applications out there. So what do? Your development staff would have to convert these interactive processes to run in batch. That costs you money too. Also, it might be error prone to have people doing the same screen over and over every night to run night processing. It definitely eventually they'll enter the wrong parameter. So those wrong parameters cause problems. So Robot Replay is a extra plugin module to Robot Schedule. And sometimes we have people ask us, Can I just buy Robot Replay? And the answer is no, because Robot Schedule and Robot Replay work hand in hand to control. If you go to the next slide, to go through the whole process of tracking all the screen execution and any sibling batch processes that run out of here. Now, Chuck talked about dependency processing. So when Robot Replay creates what we call a replay object, that's one job, and all the screens associated with it are one job, plus all the sibling processes that might get submitted in the background. We monitor all that stuff and then cause that to be a dependent job. So Robot Schedule and Robot Replay are working hand in hand to achieve that. So let me share my desktop. Now we're going to jump over from GUI to green screen because Robot Replay is an interactive process. Chuck, you should be seeing my screen.
Looks
Does it
good.
look
Looks good,
all
Tom.
right? Thank you. Thank you. So to create a replay object, we have to go into Robot Replay, and we'll see it on the RBO menu. It's option 11. And I've already set up my user profile to be able to work with Replay, so I don't have to do that. That would be something you would have to do. I come in to work with Replay objects, and I can create a new Replay object. And to go along with Chuck's program here, I'm going to call it MRP 005 INT for interactive MRP process. I usually can't talk and type too well. I'm going to run it under my user account, and I'm just going to do go main. What's going to happen? I hit enter. It asks me a question. Do I want to run things as if right now? And then it's going to start learning the screens that I'm going through. Under this interactive session, I'm going to go into the console product, and I'm going to go in and choose the history report. And the reason is I want to choose this most common message report because I can put a date in here. Today, 03/112/24, 03/112/24. So that's going to get us just that information for March 12th of this year. So I hit enter, and that'll submit that off the process. I'm going to do F3, and then I'm going to, instead of doing F3 all the way out, I'm just going to sign off. What happens is that brings me back to the Robot Replay screen, and it says, aha, you were successful. You created a replay object called MRP 005 INT. All right. So now if I press F3 here, I might have to do a refresh on the screen or enter, but there it is. There's my job. Oh, I just needed to roll down here. And one of the things I want to do is change that interactive panel that had today's date, because if I run that same interactive process day in and day out with the same set of dates, my management's not going to be happy. So I'm going to take option 1 here to look at this panel and see where those parameters are. Now, in Robot Schedule, we have this thing called dynamic parameters or reserved command variables. I can put my cursor into an input field, press F4 again, and I can get a list of those reserved command variables that are out there. I'm going to do a 7-day range year, month, day format. So I need to come down. I have a reserve command variable. I can test it here to make sure it's going to give me the results, and notice it gives me March 5th. That sounds like 7 days to me. So I'm going to choose that reserve command variable. I'm going to hit enter and F12 to save it, and it changes this to an @@. Now I need to change the second parameter because I want that one to also be dynamic. I'm not going to go through the testing, but I know that this @@ date is one that's shipped with the product, and it contains today's date. So now I've learned that in. I might type in something like reserve variable here or something like that, but you'll see that on this panel now where we have our screen images, it tells me I have reserved variables there. Now, there's also a playback, so we can play back these screen images or preview them and see what they look like. But I can now go in to Robot Schedule, and I can just schedule this in here. I'm going to just create this MRP job. I'm not going to give it a schedule. I'm going to do F10. We'll see there's our replay object. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make sure that I'm running through a multi-threaded job queue. I'm going to use, I can just use Robot Sleeper for now, for a demo. And then I'm going to run it under my user profile Tom H, because that's the one I learned it under. It just makes life easier. So that's updated. Now what I need to do is put this job into that group. And I can do that through the green screen. I can come in here, and if I'm sorted by group name, I'm going to do F9 here and sort by group with members. And we want to find our MRP group. So here it is. Now I can come in and I can take option. Oh, I forget the option for working with it from the green screen with members, Chuck. Here's my group options.
I think it's option 18, but you're prompting, so you're in the right spot.
All right, here we go. There we go. So there's our current members. I'm going to add this process to the end of the group. So MRP is what I called it, something MRP interactive. Choose it. And now it's part of this group. It's sequence number 99. I'm going to give it sequence 30 in case Chuck gets ambitious and puts a couple other jobs in there. So now we have a member. Chuck, do you want to show what that might look like in the new blueprint?
Sure, let me do that.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Do you have your GUI up on your end?
I do.
Very good. I'll stop sharing. Back
to
you.
Yep. And I'm going to just
do a reload.
And we will see there's the additional process that Tom added to the job stream.
And you can see it says sequence number 30.
Yeah. And we'll execute that in just a second, because we're going to talk about Windows and Linux and integrating that into our job stream. Tom, you want to talk about this, and then I'll do the demo?
That sounds good to me. Let's move ahead. So obviously IBM I is not by itself, or AS400, whatever you want to call it. There are many other external processes that depend on this platform. So when something runs on IBM I, you might want to run something on a POS system, another banking system, a WMS, whatever it may be, that's on Windows, Unix, or Linux, or something like that. You might have to wait for an external file on another server. So often files getting created are prerequisites for batch processes. Today, you may be handling many of these things with what we call timer jobs. Run this at 7, wait until 8, and we should be good. But occasionally you have nightmares because something happens and one of the jobs don't run on time. We want to react immediately. Again, we want to make this event driven. All right. And so if we go on to the next slide, we have Robot Schedule Enterprise. Robot Schedule Enterprise has been around for, I'm going to say 15 years now, if not probably longer. It is longer now that I think about it. And it actually surpassed a different product before that we won't even talk about because it's so long ago. But Robot Schedule Enterprise is integrated right into the graphical interface, and it has Java agents that run on Windows, Linux, SQL Server, and here we are. Look at that. It's integrated right in. So you can see jobs that are running by agent. So if you have a bunch of jobs running on one Windows server or one Linux server, you can see that. And then in the lower half of the GUI, we have the enterprise server. We can see all the agents, and you can set up some of these event-driven prerequisites like file monitoring and other items, directories, processes, services. So we think that Robot Schedule and IBM I are very reliable. So why wouldn't we put our enterprise scheduling over there, Chuck? Why wouldn't we do that?
Sure makes sense to me if IBM I is your core. So first of all, let's take a look at the enterprise server branch. If you only have the base robot schedule, you won't see the enterprise server branch. That is an add-on to robot schedule, and then this branch will show up. You will see some additional jobs show up in the RBT Sleeper subsystem. Here are the various agents that are out in my in the lab, and then the jobs that you create, you can look at those then by agent. All right, so for instance, the Windows VM desktop that I'm working on has these various jobs as part of various job streams that all touch this this VM. But I have created one here beforehand. All right, it says run Windows MRP, and I'm going to go in. I'm going to be a little bit more discrete here, and I'm going to jump into the job. And I just want to show you this isn't this particular job is a Windows process. It could be Linux or AIX, and we have visibility then into the server that you're talking to. So for instance, here, I'm actually traversing through the Windows directory starting at the root. And of course, we've got the credentials saved in robot schedule so we can talk to that target job. So I can have this job be dependent upon my MRP group completing. All right, so all I'm going to do, I should have left that job up. I'm going to change my Windows MRP process to be reactive to my MRP group. So I'm going to simply add a robot job, MRP. Here's my MRP group. Okay. And I'll save that. Let me hit the OK button. Okay. So now there's a dependency. So I'm just going to, Tom, I'm just going to run my MRP group.
Okay.
All right. And of course, that'll take a couple seconds to run that. And then as part of the processing, it's going to run this MRP in the Windows world, which behind the scenes, all I told it to do was execute the Notepad exe. It could be a batch job, it could be a bat file, it could be an executable, it could be any file that you want to execute out in the Windows or Linux world. All right, it's executing Tom's interactive process, by the way, now. Thank you. All right, that's done. And notice and it happened pretty quick, but there's the MRP Windows process, and sure enough, behind the scenes, my Windows Notepad popped up. All right, so
that's impressive, Chuck. Very impressive, including interactive IBM and a Windows process.
All right, let's finish the story, Tom. Let's talk about processing history and audit trails.
Yeah, I mean, history is very important when it comes to audit. We've been talking Sarbanes-Oxley now for over 2 decades now in the business world, and we've been talking about other regulations more recently, but regulations are here to stay. They're not going away. And part of IT audits is being able to look at who has control of what, when it ran. And some of that, however, is problem determination. So we have great ability to look into problems. We're going to help you save time in troubleshooting. It's easy to find job logs, the history logs. You now have forecasting available to you. We talked about auditing already. And then SLAs. We got job warnings, job monitor warnings, and then many of these things are just canned reports that are built into the robot schedule product. Let's take a look at how we get there. So from the GUI, we have the ability to come in here and look at job completion history by application, by job, by user. There's many different sort criteria, and then we can drill in to a particular job's spool files, attributes, history log, all those things right at your fingertips, either in the GUI or the green screen. Okay. And then, of course, auditing jobs, we want to know about jobs as they change for things, like I said earlier, regulations like Sarbanes-Oxley. Financial institutions where there's critical bank processes that are running. You need to pass those audits. Change control practices have tightened up over the years, or DevOps processes, whatever you want to call it. A lot of the built-in scheduling doesn't have this history for you, or it's very hard to find. With Robot, we make it much easier, and we built in this auditing right into it to create audit reports of what ran. Now, the audit log report is just part of the reporting section under system setup. You can go in and choose a date range, and then Inside Robot, you probably know this or maybe don't. We do ship some of our own profiles, and those profiles do run several processes and update our database. You can omit those profiles so they don't show up because, quite honestly, you're mostly interested in your end users of the product, the operators, whoever's changing the schedule. These reports can be just scheduled out on the product, or you can submit them on demand. The audit report itself is a handy report that generates some codes that tell you, for instance, like somebody held a job or released a job in this case, and who did it, what user is all part of the information that's printed on the report. You can see some of this stuff just interactively too. Here we can see somebody um, commented the command out. So on the last thing here, we have the PowerTech Interact product, and somebody commented that command out, and we can see that it was, again, that Chuck guy in both cases, one through the green screen, one through the GUI. Now, another very important part of the robot family of products is the Good Morning Report. We have that in pretty much every robot product. But basically, in this case, it's a summarization of the jobs that ran through Robot Schedule over a certain period of time. We know auditors love this report. It shows that you're monitoring the health of your schedules over a date range. You can look at deviations, like forecasted deviations, total number of jobs that run deviations, jobs outside of run deviations, and then we'll give you a list of any abnormal or jobs that terminated abnormally, whatever you want to call it, so that again, you can tell the auditors, I'm monitoring the schedule. We use the Good Morning Report as a summary to show us what's happening inside of Robot Schedule. There are a few other things out there that you can use, like the job monitors. Again, for those who are fear or have that fear that somebody might miss a job, the job monitors can help automate that process. You can use Robot Schedule itself too, for that matter, to automate jobs that are inside the scheduler. There's features like Opal and other things that I've done over the years to help automate the monitoring. The job monitors are built in. It doesn't work for every single job that you can create in Robot Schedule, but you can do things like job overrun, job underrun, and late start. And you have options to warn you to a message queue, to robot alert, to robot network. You can even end the job in some cases if it's running too long. Your duration can be in hours, or it can be a certain time of the day that you want it to complete by, or in the case of a forecast, you want it to start by a certain time. You can specify a time that you want it to run on. We do have a few other things in the product. There's a command called robot force forecast jobs miss. That is a very handy command that a lot of people don't realize is in the product. Again, the idea behind that is to get rid of that manual checklist of checking jobs off as they run, because it compares completion history to actual forecast history. Now at Fortra, we had a name change, by the way, Chuck. We were Help Systems for 40 years, and last November of 2022, we had a name change, and it was simply a name change. But at Fortra, you heard about our marketplace survey. You probably have seen the state of the IBM security study. We're very much so tied into this IBM ecosystem, and we help customers out with backup and recovery in HA, document management centered around IBM, cybersecurity, of course, anything cybersecurity, monitoring and alerting you about IBM. We also are great business intelligence solutions with SQL and Showcase. We help you with your hardware upgrades with capacity planning. And of course, one of our favorites, Chuck, is automation. You and I have been helping customers automate systems for many, many years. And the final thing we want to make sure that you're aware of is that we do put out newsletters and emails about what's happening at the company, important product updates, educational material, invites for events that we're doing. And but you have to sign up for those things. So you can go out to the Fortra website, look at resources and Fortra subscription center, and then allows you to sign up for any of this information that can come right to your desktop, provided your spam blocker isn't blocking everything.
All
So
right.
there you go.
Tom, I think we did it. We told the story of how to go about automating your IBM processes, integrating that with Interactive and Windows Linux, using the toolkit in the robot product line called Robot Schedule. So thanks everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you on a future Fortra webinar.
Thank you.